My family had keys to my home long before I realized they had no respect for it. They never asked when they used them. They never texted before they came. The lock would click, the door would open, and suddenly my quiet apartment wasn't mine anymore. The story you are about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team of the channel Revenge Amber, inspired by real-life situations to convey lessons about family, emotion, and human values. All characters and events are illustrative. The first time I tried to bring it up, my mother laughed like I had told a bad joke. "Why are you acting like a stranger in your own family?" she said. "We raised you." My father didn't even look up from the couch. "If you didn't want us coming by, you shouldn't have given us keys." I remember standing there, still wearing my work clothes, laptop bag digging into my shoulder, realizing I had never given them permission. They had simply taken it. My younger brother Ryan treated my place like a lounge. He'd toss his jacket on my chair and say, "Relax. Lena, it's not like you're using it." When I asked him to clean up after himself, he smirked. "You live alone. It's quiet here. We bring life into it." His wife Sloane was worse. She'd wander through my bedroom, open drawers without asking, and comment casually, "You have nice things for someone who's always working," when I asked her not to touch my stuff. She tilted her head and said, "Wow, you're really territorial for someone who doesn't even have kids." Every conversation ended the same way. I was sensitive. I was making it awkward. I was forgetting where I came from, so I stopped pushing back. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself family didn't mean harm, even when harm was exactly what I felt. On Sunday dinners, my mother would smile across the table and say, "Lena's place is so convenient, close to everything." My father would nod. "Smart investment, helps the whole family." No one ever asked how I felt about it. If this already sounds familiar to you, you're not alone. Stories like this don't start with shouting or slammed doors. They start quietly, with access given once and never returned. As you listen, stay with me, because the smallest moments are the ones that matter later. That night, as I locked my door and set my bag down, I noticed the key hook by the kitchen was empty. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the bare wall, feeling something shift inside my chest. I didn't know it yet, but that missing space was the first warning. People hear what they want when you let them. My parents told everyone I worked with computers. That was the version they preferred. It sounded small enough to explain why I was always tired and successful enough to justify why they felt entitled to what I had. I never corrected them. At a family dinner, my father leaned back in his chair and said, "So, what is it you do all day?" "Exactly." "Reset passwords." Ryan laughed. "She's the tech person. You know, clicks buttons, fixes things." I said nothing. I cut my food, took a sip of water, and waited for the subject to change. It always did. Sloane glanced at me over her glass. Must be nice working from home. No real pressure. I smiled because it was easier than explaining how 60-hour weeks feel when your work decides whether a financial system stays secure or collapses. I didn't tell them about the consulting firm that paid me $3,800 a month just to stay on call. I didn't tell them about the long nights reviewing breach reports or the quiet panic that comes with knowing one mistake could cost someone everything. When my mother finally asked, "Are you saving for anything, or are you just spending on yourself?" her voice sounded curious, but her eyes weren't. "I'm fine," I said. "That's not an answer." She replied, "Family plans together." My father nodded. "Ryan and Sloane have real responsibilities now. You're single. You can afford to help." Help meant access. Help meant availability. Help meant I would adjust. And they wouldn't. Later that night, as we cleared the table, Ryan clapped a hand on my shoulder. "You should be grateful." "Lena, not everyone gets to live like you." I looked at his hand resting there, casual and confident, and said quietly, "I worked for it." He chuckled. "Sure you did." That was when I understood something I had been avoiding for years. They didn't ask about my life because the answers didn't matter to them. They had already decided who I was. The useful one. The quiet one. The one who wouldn't push back. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with a message from my mother. Next time, leave the door unlocked. It's annoying having to look for the spare. I stared at the screen until it went dark, then set the phone down without replying. I came home early that afternoon, earlier than I ever did. My head was still full of unfinished tasks, and all I wanted was quiet. The door was unlocked. I stepped inside and heard voices. My mother's, sharp and familiar. Sloane's laugh, light and careless. Judith stood in my bedroom wearing my silk robe, the one I bought after a promotion I never told them about. She was adjusting the belt when she saw me. "Oh," she said, startled. "You're home already." Sloane was sitting on my bed, one leg tucked under her, rubbing a thick cream into her arms. The open jar rested beside her. I recognized it instantly. A medical-grade moisturizer I'd bought for $180 because my skin reacted badly to cheaper products. I said, "Please don't use that." Sloane looked down at the jar, then back at me. "This." She dipped her fingers in again. "It's just lotion. It's not just lotion." I said, "I asked you not to go through my things." Judith sighed like I'd embarrassed her. "Lena, don't start. I'm not starting." I said, "I'm asking." Sloane smiled, slow and deliberate. "You're acting like we broke something. You opened it." I said. That was new. Ryan appeared in the doorway behind me, chewing loudly. "What's going on?" "She's upset about cream," Sloane said. "Apparently this one is special." Ryan laughed. "You hear that special cream?" I felt heat crawl up my neck. "It's not about the cream. It's about you being in my room." Judith crossed her arms. "You're being dramatic. I live here." I said, "This is my space." Ryan leaned against the doorframe. "You live alone. No one's hurting anything." Sloane wiped her hands on my blanket. "Honestly, Lena, you don't even need all this space. You're barely home." Something inside me shifted. "That doesn't give you permission." Judith's voice hardened. "Permission? We're family. I didn't invite you into my bedroom," I said. Silence fell, sharp and uncomfortable. Then Judith shook her head. "I don't like this tone. You sound ungrateful." Ryan added, "You always do this. Make things awkward." Sloane stood up, holding the jar. "If it matters that much, I'll take it with me. You're acting like we stole something." I stepped forward. "Put it down." She looked at me for a long second, then placed the jar back on the dresser with a soft thud. There. Happy. No one apologized. Judith took off the robe and draped it over a chair. "You never wear nice things anyway. You're always working." "That doesn't make them yours," I said. Ryan laughed again, but there was an edge to it now. "You need to relax." "Lena, you're acting like this is a hotel." I met his eyes. "This is my home." He shrugged. "Same thing." They left not long after, moving past me like I was the inconvenience. As the door closed behind them, the apartment felt smaller, tighter. I stood in my bedroom, staring at the jar on the dresser, the blanket with Sloane's fingerprints still visible. My hands were shaking, but I didn't cry. I wiped the cream away, closed the lid, and sat on the edge of the bed. It wasn't about the lotion. It was about how easily they crossed lines, and how natural it felt to them to do it again. They came over the next evening like nothing had happened. My father sat at the kitchen table, folding his hands as if he were about to deliver a sermon. My mother hovered near the counter, rearranging things that didn't need rearranging. Ryan and Sloane stayed close together, whispering and smiling like they already knew how this would end. Thomas cleared his throat. "We've been talking." I leaned against the counter. "About what?" "About Ryan and Sloane's situation," my mother said quickly. "Their place isn't ideal." Ryan nodded. The basement gets damp. It's not great long term. Sloane rested a hand on his arm. We need stability. My father gestured around the room. You have space. You're not using it. I live here, I said. That's not what I meant, he replied. You live alone. It makes sense for family to consolidate resources. I felt my jaw tighten. You're talking about moving in. Ryan smiled. Just for a while. No, I said. The word landed heavier than I expected. Judith's eyes widened. Lena. I said no. Thomas leaned forward. Don't be impulsive. This is practical. What's practical about taking over my home? It's not taking over, he said. It's sharing. Sloane added softly. We'd take the bedroom. You could use the couch for now. I stared at her. You've already decided where I'd sleep. Ryan shrugged. You're barely here. That doesn't make it yours, I said. My mother's voice sharpened. You're being selfish. I'm setting a boundary. Thomas's expression darkened. After everything we've done for you. There it was. You raised me. I said. That doesn't give you ownership. Ryan laughed, short and dismissive. You hear how she talks now. Judith shook her head. Success changes people. I felt something settle in my chest, cold and steady. I'm not discussing this again. My father stood. You don't get to make this decision alone. Yes, I do, I said. Silence stretched. Ryan reached into his pocket and tossed something onto the counter. My access fob slid across the surface and stopped near my hand. I'll keep this, he said, until you calm down. I picked it up slowly. That's mine. You're overreacting, he said. We're family. I closed my fingers around the fob. You don't get to decide when I calm down. Judith sighed. You're making this harder than it needs to be. They left in a cluster of irritation and disbelief, convinced this was temporary. The door shut behind them with a final click. I walked to the hook by the kitchen wall and froze. The spare fob was gone. I stood there, staring at the empty space, feeling the weight of the conversation settle into something much heavier. They hadn't asked. They hadn't waited. They had already moved in. Thursday was supposed to be quiet. That mattered, because the call scheduled for that afternoon wasn't just another meeting. It was the final technical audit for a consulting contract worth $520,000 a year. Not a promise, not a pitch, a decision. I had spent weeks preparing. I had checked every access point, every protocol, every contingency. When the video window opened, I recognized the faces immediately. 2 executives and a security director I had worked with before. Professional, cautious, watching closely. Good afternoon. Lena, the security director said. We're ready when you are. I am, I replied. For the first 20 minutes. Everything went smoothly. I walked them through the architecture, explained the vulnerabilities they had missed, demonstrated how quickly a breach could escalate if ignored. I could see it in their faces when the tone shifted. Interest. Consideration. Let's proceed with the live verification, one of them said. I nodded and reached for my keyboard. That was when I heard the lock disengage. I froze. The door opened. Ryan walked in first, holding a portable speaker. Sloane followed, already laughing. 2 people I didn't recognize trailed behind them, talking over each other. Whoa, Ryan said, glancing at the screen. You're still working. I said nothing. My pulse was loud in my ears. Sloane leaned closer. Are those clients, Ryan? I said, keeping my voice low. You need to leave. Now. He waved a hand. Relax. We'll be quick. One of the strangers asked. Is this a presentation or something? Yes, I said. And you're interrupting it. Sloane rolled her eyes. You're always so intense. On the screen, the security director frowned. Lena, is everything all right? Yes, I said too quickly. Just a moment. Ryan bent down and unplugged the router. This will just take a second. We need music. The screen went dark. My connection dropped. The silence that followed was absolute. I stared at the blank monitor as if it might correct itself. It didn't. Ryan straightened up. Did that mess something up? I turned to him slowly. You just disconnected a secure system. He blinked. You can reconnect it. It doesn't work like that. I said. That was a live audit. Sloane crossed her arms. You're exaggerating. My laptop chimed. An email notification appeared. I opened it with shaking hands. Due to a severe breach of protocol witnessed during today's session, we are suspending your candidacy effective immediately. I didn't read the rest out loud. I didn't need to. Ryan laughed nervously. See? No big deal. I stood up. That was a $520,000 contract. The room went quiet. Sloane scoffed. That's not real. It was real, I said. And it's gone. Ryan shook his head. You fix systems. You don't make that kind of money. I picked up my phone as it buzzed. A voice message from my mother appeared. I pressed play. Lena, Judith said, her voice tight. Your father is upset. You embarrassed everyone yesterday. You need to stop this before it gets worse. I looked at Ryan, at Sloane, at the strangers now pretending not to listen. This, I said softly, is worse. Ryan frowned. You're blaming us. Yes, I said. I am. Sloane laughed once, sharp and dismissive. You always do this. Something goes wrong and suddenly it's our fault. I didn't respond. I closed my laptop, slowly and carefully, like I was handling something fragile. Get out, I said. Ryan's smile faded. You don't mean that. I do, I said. All of you. Leave. They hesitated, waiting for me to soften. I didn't. When the door finally closed behind them, the apartment felt hollow in a way it never had before. I sat back down, stared at the dark screen, and let the quiet settle. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I understood something then, with a clarity that hurt more than anger ever could. They hadn't just crossed my boundaries. They had decided my future was an acceptable price. The first call came from my father. Tell me this isn't as bad as your mother says, Thomas demanded. You scared everyone. I lost the contract, I said. There was a pause. Then, you'll get another one. It took months to reach that stage, I said. They ended it. He exhaled sharply, then apologized. I held the phone tighter. For what? For making a scene, he said. For embarrassing the family. I hung up. My phone buzzed again. A message from my mother followed almost immediately. You're being stubborn. Ryan didn't mean any harm. Families forgive. I listened to the voice message she sent next. Her tone controlled and careful. Lena, people are asking questions. We don't need this kind of attention. Just say it was a misunderstanding. I didn't reply. Ryan texted a few minutes later. You didn't have to kick everyone out. We were just hanging out. I stared at the words until they blurred. Hanging out. That was what he called unplugging my livelihood. I typed back once. You cost me my work. His response came fast. Don't be dramatic. That was the word they always used when I asked for respect. Later that night, Sloane called. I almost didn't answer. You really think this is our fault, she said, without greeting. You could have warned us. I did, I said. Multiple times. She scoffed. You live in your head. Real life is messy. This was my real life. I said. She sighed. Look, we'll talk when you calm down. The line went dead. I set the phone on the table and sat there in the quiet. The anger I expected never came. What settled in instead was something colder, heavier. They weren't afraid of losing me. They were afraid of losing access. An hour later, my phone lit up again. This time, it was a message from my mother. Don't do anything you can't take back. I read it once, then again. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and picked up my keys. As I stepped out the door, I looked back at the apartment, at the space they treated like a shared resource. I didn't feel the need to explain myself anymore. I felt the need to protect what was left. My attorney didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He reviewed the messages on my phone, listened to my account of the audit call, and nodded slowly as if none of it surprised him. They have access to your unit, he said, but they do not have rights. I sat across from him, my hands folded tightly in my lap. They're my family. That's not a legal category, he replied. Ownership is. He turned the screen toward me. The documents were familiar. I had signed them years ago without much thought. The condominium is held under your limited liability company, he continued. For tax purposes, you are listed as an authorized occupant, not the owner. I frowned. So, what does that mean? It means access is conditional, he said, and revocable. The words landed with weight. If I revoke it, I said, what happens to them? They become unauthorized occupants. He said, if they enter, it's trespassing. If they alter the property, it's damage. I looked down at my hands. My mother's voice echoed in my head. Families forgive. My attorney watched me carefully. You have two options, he said. You handle this privately and hope they respect your boundaries. Or you enforce them. I thought of Ryan laughing as he unplugged the router, of my father telling me to apologize, of my mother asking me to lie so no one would talk. I don't want to hurt them, I said. He nodded. Then don't. Let the law do what emotions can't. There was a long silence between us. My phone vibrated. A message from Ryan appeared on the screen. Dad says you're taking this too far. I closed my eyes. They've never listened, I said quietly. My attorney leaned back. You're not punishing them. You're choosing clarity. I took a breath that felt deeper than any I had taken in days. Do it. He didn't ask me to repeat myself. We went through the steps together. Authorization revoked, access codes disabled, building management notified. When it was done, he looked at me and said, I recommend you remove yourself from the situation. I already am, I said, outside his office. I sat in my car and stared at my phone. Another message from my mother appeared. Please don't turn this into something public. I typed a reply, then erased it. Instead, I turned the phone face down. That evening, I packed only what I needed. Clothes, documents, a few personal items I didn't want them touching. As I locked the door behind me, I felt the familiar urge to explain, to justify, to soften what I had done. I didn't. I walked away knowing that, for the first time, the rules weren't emotional. They were clear. They didn't call at first. That was how I knew they were confident. Ryan left a voicemail 2 days after I moved out. We cleaned up a bit, he said casually. You can come get your stuff whenever you're done sulking. My mother followed later that evening. We're watching the place, Judith said. It's better this way. Less tension. I was already in London when the messages kept coming. I listened to them at night, one after another. Their voices calm, certain, unchanged. They believed absence meant surrender. A week later, my attorney forwarded an email from building management. Unauthorized activity detected inside the unit. I read it twice, then closed my laptop without replying. Ryan called that night. I answered. Why didn't you tell us the building people were so sensitive? He said. They keep asking questions. They should, I replied. He laughed. Relax. I'm improving the place. That wall between the living room and the spare room was useless. My chest tightened. You're doing construction. It's not construction, he said. It's cosmetic. I ended the call. 2 days later, my phone rang again. This time the number was unfamiliar. Ms. Harper. A man said calmly. "This is Officer Daniel Morris with Jersey City Police." I stepped away from the crowd on the sidewalk. "Yes, we're at a property associated with your limited liability company." He continued, "There appears to be significant interior damage. Are you the owner?" "Yes." I said, "Do you know the individuals currently inside the unit?" I paused. I could hear my mother in my head, her careful voice. "Don't do anything you can't take back. They do not have permission to be there." I said. There was a brief silence. "Understood. We'll proceed." The call ended. My mother called seconds later. "What did you tell them?" she demanded. "The truth," I said. "You've gone too far," she said. "Your father is furious. I warned you." I said. Ryan called next, his voice sharp with panic. "They're saying this is illegal." "You were told not to be there," I said. Sloan got on the line. "This is humiliating. Do you know who can see this?" "Yes," I said. "The people you invited." There was shouting in the background, someone telling Ryan to put his hands where they could be seen. "You did this," Ryan said, his voice breaking. "You could stop it." "I already did." I said. "Weeks ago." The line went dead. Later that night, my attorney sent a short message. Charges filed. Damage documented. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed and let the quiet settle. There was no satisfaction in it, no rush, only a steady sense of inevitability. The next morning, my mother left one final message. "I don't recognize you," she said. "This isn't who you were raised to be." I deleted it without replying. That afternoon, I walked through a crowded street, my phone silent for the first time in weeks. No demands, no explanations required. They had believed I would come back because I always had before. This time, I didn't. The legal part moved slower than the night everything collapsed. My attorney explained it over the phone in a steady voice. "No jail time," he said. "Restitution, records, restrictions. It will follow them." "That's fine," I replied. "It usually is," he said, then paused. "For the person who finally stops absorbing the damage." I returned from London 2 weeks later. Not to the condo. I didn't need to see it again. I went straight to the townhouse I had rented quietly, 35 minutes outside the city, where no one had a spare key and no one expected to walk in unannounced. My parents reached out once more. We met in a small cafe near the station. Neutral ground, public, safe. Judith looked older, tired in a way I hadn't seen before. Thomas sat rigid, his jaw set like this was still a negotiation he could win. "This never should have gone that far." My mother said, "Families handle things privately." I wrapped my hands around my cup. I tried. My father leaned forward. "You turned us into criminals." "No," I said. "You did that yourselves." His face hardened. "We raised you better than this." I met his eyes. "You raised me to survive you." Silence settled between us, thick and final. Judith reached for my hand, then stopped halfway. "We didn't know you were serious." "I was always serious," I said. "You just never listened." They left soon after, the conversation unfinished because there was nothing left to say. That night, alone in my new living room, I opened my phone and scrolled through the family group chat. Years of messages, requests disguised as concern, guilt wrapped in affection. I exited the chat and deleted it. The quiet that followed wasn't empty. It was clean. If you've stayed with this story until now, you probably recognize pieces of it in your own life. Maybe not the details, but the feeling of being expected to carry more than your share. If that's you, know that you're not alone, and you're not wrong for wanting peace. If you feel ready, share your thoughts or your own story in the comments, or simply stay and listen. Sometimes that's enough to begin. I set the phone down and turned off the lights. For the first time in a long while, nothing was waiting for me on the other side of a locked door. And that was everything.